We're going to discuss a contrived, it's not contrived, but it's just one of those topics that is talked about ad nauseum, and yet it is so important. It's literally the foundation of everything. It's love. It's love. It's self-love. It's love of others. And that is a very nuanced conversation. I have a lot to say, and there's no way that I could have packaged this in a workshop and waited. I just had to talk about it now. So, love. So many people misunderstand love. We spend so much time trying to love people. We should be spending time trying to understand them. So, love is literally the hardest thing that you could possibly do. It's the most radical, revolutionary thing that you could do. Especially when it's easy to take the route of polarizing. And a lot of times, polarization is the path to love, because it's in polarizing that we understand these different polarities, and so we can take them as a part of ourselves. You guys, there's so many things I want to say about this. First of all, I would love it if people would start doing mirror work in relationships. And I think that there's a lot of you out there who the very thought of that is actually very intriguing or exciting to you. Find other people in the community. Find other people to do this reflection work with, because this is how we're going to start to come together. So I just did a process yesterday. I'm going to get to love in a minute, but this is all a part of it. I did a process yesterday with someone I've known very intimately for 2 years, where I said, okay, I want to know all the things that you hate about me and that you can't stand and that you judge. And I want to know all the things that you love about me. And so we created a container for that person to say all those things to me, and then for me to say the same thing. And in reality, when we're doing that exercise, though some of it is about our, okay, how do I frame this? What ends up happening is you realize that the things that you really hate about that other person, you either do to yourself, or you have polarized so far in the opposite direction that that's why you're attracted to this person. So I love this kind of work, because all the things that I'm judging and hating and pushing away and fearing within other people is always a perfect opportunity for me to see what my blind spots are and how I can start to have a different relationship with those parts of myself, and thus have a different relationship with these people outside of me. So let's talk about love. What is love? It is an act of very deeply connecting to and understanding something, and then being in reality about whatever that thing is. So if it's another person, that's being in reality about their personal truths. That's truly understanding them, truly hearing them, truly seeing them. And then deciding how much of that is compatible with you. How much of that you can actually meet. So this is why love is so complicated of a topic down in a dimension where we are so physicalized, because it doesn't necessarily look like unifying and becoming one. Sometimes it looks like taking physical space, because again, to love is to understand that thing. But I also have to be loving towards myself, which means I have to be holding that same level of curiosity and desire to understand towards that other person as I am for me. We both have equal skin in the game, especially if this is a relationship. And then you put those things up against each other. And this is why love is so hard, is because it forces you to be in reality. And love, which is to take something as a part of yourself, to capitalize on the best interest of that thing. And again, let's say that that is a psychopathic killer. Now, at a base level, the most loving thing for me might be to get away from that person so as to not cause danger or harm to myself. But on a much deeper level, if we all just continue to push that away, what does it do? Why do we have criminals in our society? Why do we have sex offenders? What's going on at a deeper level? We have to look at the collective dysfunction. So, the reason why love is so hard is because it means that we have to be in reality about other people. And the majority of the way that we are having relationships with other people is not actually love. It is to be in love with an idea or an overlay or a false version of that person. And that's very dangerous because it's not a real relationship, it's not a real connection, and that's basically a lot of people's experience in childhood, and it's a very isolating one. And then we just continue to perpetuate that in our adult relationships with other people. So we have to be willing to be in reality about whatever it is that we find about ourselves or another person. And yes, in this physical body, that might mean incompatibility. At a fucking much larger level, you want to really look at incompatibility, it really comes down to fragmentation. But for the sake of us actually having individual egos and being identified with that, and that's basically the foundation of our entire experience here, I wouldn't tell you to just totally get rid of that, right? You'd be without your own compass. So your own personal needs and truths, which are connected to your preferences in this life, your soul essence, whatever the reality of that is far more important than continuing to exist in a fantasy about yourself or other people. But I think because human beings can be so stubborn sometimes, we have to, in a lot of cases, we have to be backed into a corner. We have to be pushed to the point where we are forced to start to actually take our own needs into consideration, where the pain of separating from ourselves becomes so great that we can't do it anymore. And a lot of people, when they start that process, they don't even realize that that's what's happening. It happened so long ago. And it's also very easy to get lost in the physical here. And there is constant attack, meaning there is, maybe that's not the right word. Some of it is quite insidious. But even that, we can get to that in a minute. There is a constant message that's being broadcast that is one of division. Divide from yourself, divide from other. And that's a very big reflection and mirror of what we have been doing to ourselves. And at this point, it doesn't really matter who we point the finger at, although that's a very real part of the healing process, a very real part of the healing process. We have to take ownership for it. And so that's why I'm here talking about love, because that's how we take ownership of it, and not in a, like a, I don't know what people's idea of love is. It's not feeling positive about something all the time. But that's again because we're in reality about that thing. And that's the only fucking place that we have access to power from. So that's what's so important to get about this. The act of love, of literally understanding something and being in reality about it, is the only place that you have access to your power. Only place you can actually enact actual change on your reality. So many thoughts about this. Okay. So, love is an action. It is a practice. I would say that if you put a human being in a perfectly healthy environment, love is not something that you will have to teach somebody. That is something that will be inherently communicated in how you interact with that being. But given that the majority of people here are disconnected from themselves, and that happened a long ass time ago, they don't actually know how to love. I hate to be like such a heavy, what's a name that, like a heavy, I don't know, it's a heavy conversation, but it's one that like, it's really empowering if you get it. Because if you get that we are in a place where nobody really learned how to love, then you realize how much of a practice it actually is. Again, where everything is saying other, externalize. So, love is also not something that you can just do one time and just be like, I love you, so I don't ever have to show it again. I don't ever have to put any effort into that. It's a consistent choice and a consistent practice. A lot of times we're unconsciously choosing to turn against ourselves and to turn against other people to stay safe. This is the opposite, which is why it's so painful, because in that process of re-owning whatever it is that we're re-owning about ourselves, let's say in self-love, we also have to feel the pain of what it was actually like to have to split off from ourselves in the first place. But it's so rewarding because there's so much relief. Like, I just worked with an individual today who was able to come to terms with the fact that not all of their needs were met in childhood. People are literally kidding themselves, walking around thinking that they had a fulfilling... It's not about being a fucking Grim Reaper and being like, I just want to let you all know that nobody actually had a good childhood and all of you were abused and you've just suppressed it your whole lives. Because that doesn't sound very appealing, does it? But it's like, how can we have adults, this many, and I mean the whole damn population, with this many crazy scenarios playing out in their life, and then just be like, yeah, that has nothing to do with my childhood. And that is a lot of people. And that's not to like shame that in any way, shape, or form. It's to say, once we were able to get in reality, because here's the thing, why don't we go in reality? Because we're afraid of losing something. The loss. The perceived loss, which is ironic because we already lost a long time ago because we lost ourselves in that process. But that's why we don't want to go in reality. Because it goes, well, what do you think is going to happen if you see that there may have been needs that were not met of yours? What could happen if you would start to see these people in a bad light? I don't know, maybe I'd like turn against them, or maybe I'd start to reconsider a lot of the interactions that I thought I had with these people, and I don't want to cause problems, right? I don't want to make waves. I just want everything to go back to the way that it was. And that's what a lot of us are doing, just continuing to sweep stuff under the rug. And the reality is that when we say, okay, wow, yeah, this is the way that it has been done, and I can see that that's dysfunctional, then I have power. Then I have power. Because then I can connect the dots and go, oh my God, and do something different. But if I don't even know that I did disconnect from myself, or if I don't even know, I don't even know that there's needs that I have that aren't being met. I don't even know that there's parts of me that have been screaming and crying for 30 years in the basement of my own subconscious. If you don't even know that, like, we're talking about a level of denial, you guys, within our population that's like insane. And it's all what? To stay connected, to socially survive. And then we create all these weird fucking neurotic behaviors because it's like, well, nobody loves me and nobody accepts me and I'm worthless. And like we internalize all this stuff and we become like these caged, like sickly animals who have all this attachment wounding and all this like splitting. You know, everything that kept you safe, that was loved. Everything that got you love. What was a yes from the family? That's literally like, because I could talk about these concepts ad nauseum because we have to actually start to embody this and get how real this is. That we're not a single person, that we have a multitude of all these different aspects within ourselves, that we're constantly suppressing them and plowing over them and projecting the same way that our caregivers did onto them. I see this constantly within my own self and with other people. We're like checking in with a part and I'm like, okay, well, being connected to that part, like, what do you think that that part of you needs? And it's like an answer that is like totally unattuned to that part. It's like, well, I just think that they need to, get stronger. It's like, oh, now we're just talking to our parts the same way that our parents did, which is normal. And we notice them and go, but what did they really need? But that's only possible through love. That's only possible through actual intimacy and connection with these parts of ourselves. Not from a top down, mentally, like that's what it feels like a lot of the time as a child. To be around a parent who's not really totally attuned to you. Or maybe completely fucking unattuned to you. And it's like, you're like throwing all this advice at me, or you're like saying all this stuff, but that doesn't have anything to do with what's going on in here. And we do the same thing to ourselves. We assume that we know what a part of us needs, but we're not actually even connected to that part. And so we're like, I don't know why it's not working. I keep telling her to go to the gym. It's like, that's not what she needs. You would have to go under the water and find out where, like, if you imagine somebody's stuck and they're trying to swim out of the water and you're just like, just come on, just like swim harder. It's like, no, you have to go down into the water. You notice that their pants are caught on something. Oh, that's where you're stuck. But so you wouldn't know that unless you go down there and create that intimacy. And then you, oh, yeah, screaming at this person to just fucking swim faster and harder. Not going to work. You don't understand the real need or the real feeling that's behind that part, let's say, the part of us. It's like, why is this not working? Because we're not actually practicing love. So this is something that we are pioneering. And I want to say that as a collective here, many of you who are in this community, those of us who have been processing, I'll say, some of the higher dimensional layers of all of this, or we'll say the deeper pain layers that are connected to everything that's going on this planet. I'm having a really hard, okay. people are going to have all kinds of fucking reactions because it's horrific. Being in reality about where we're at and what's going on is horrific. It's where we have power. Being in that reality, being able to do something about it. But just be careful, because that polarizing and that othering, it's very seductive, and it can be filled with all kinds of justifications. It's a very nuanced perspective that we are being asked to hold within the world, to both hold the reality of the pain of being a human being and processing, whether it's galactic memories or just your own childhood. Processing the fact that we have predators, that those predators and those predatorial impulses live within us. And it's like, how do you hold that, allow space for all of that, all the rawness and realness, without bypassing any of it, and not continue to stay in that place of other, because that's the fear that moves us back into the separation, and we want to be orienting ourselves towards a space of understanding. There are going to be things that we are asked to truly understand and comprehend at a deeper level that some people are just not capable of processing that kind of nuance around. But we will have to hold it, because even the darkest, ugliest things that exist on this planet are not separate from you. They are not. You can hold your hand like this, okay? You don't have to be friends. You can hold your hand. You can keep that energy. You can master that energy. You can keep it at bay. That's mastery. But moving back into separation without truly understanding something is a huge opportunity missed. And not everybody's going to take that path. It's not about allowing yourself to be abused. It's not about allowing yourself to be siphoned. Oh my God, is she saying that I have to take evil as a part of myself? This is a whole other conversation, because evil is on the other side of what we are calling love. And I can tell you that on my own spiritual journey, I have been all over the fucking map as it relates to this. It's a very difficult thing to integrate. And I'm not saying that I've integrated it yet. But where I'm at with this now, and hopefully this will help some of you out there who play with these thoughts as well, or you'll notice the resonance in your body or the lack of resonance. I am genuinely interested in understanding everything that we are calling evil. Because I'm telling you, I have been tasked within my own life to face some of the darkest, most sadistic energies that exist. And I can tell you that I am not evil. Even the lowest demonic, parasitic entities have needs that are not being met. And so now they have to live parasitically off of the other. And that is why love is so important. Because in order for me not to be a match to a demonic entity, I have to actually love myself. I have to actually own all the parts of myself, because the second that I disown a part of myself and I disown a need, guess what I just became a match for? A demon who is now going to have a symbiotic relationship with me. And I had to go through the purification of bifurcation to understand the nuance in separating the wheat from the chaff, in separating the distortion from the reality, in being able to be anchored in my own sovereign truth, to be able to hold my hand, to go, wait, I want to master this energy. Wait a minute, let me back up and look at this. That was so important. That discernment, those boundaries are so important. Knowing yourself is so important. But if I'm afraid of that thing and I'm disowning it, I'm going to have an even more unconscious relationship with it. So the more that we're judging something and pushing it away from ourselves, the less likely we are to understand that thing, the way more likely it is to blindside us or just to occupy space within our own subconscious and then come up in all kinds of weird ways in our reality. So this is where I'm at. Doing everything I can to radically own the parts of me and to be really, really curious about understanding other people and being in reality about them. Only place we have power. Okay, that's it. That's all I have. That's all I have, folks. Any questions? Anybody want to say anything? I'll hang out for like a couple minutes and then I'm gonna go. Amelia says, yes, I resonate with this. I also think many people rejects Moon and Saturn, but they're rejecting the part of themselves. Yeah, well, and that's where we need to be able to separate out the difference between like an artificial overlay on something and the true energy of that. And if we just, like, everything is both. So we want to become aware of the contrast of those things because we want to become aware of what feels good for us. Is it the organic energy of that planet? If we know what the distorted one is, maybe we can work with that energy in a different way within ourselves. But when we get stuck or trapped in just looking at the distortion, then we start to move into fear. Then we start to move into separation. It's not actually getting us closer to understanding anything. Because dark groups has connection doesn't mean they're all demon. Powerful sis. Love you, Sabrina. Thanks so much for these reminders. I imagine as soon as I get off, I'm going to be like, damn it, I didn't say that one fucking thing that I wanted to say. All right, I'm going to give you guys like 30 more seconds. If nobody has a question, I'm going to jump off. Is been pretty present recently, no bad parts. You've been pretty present recently, no bad parts. What do you mean, no bad parts? Hold on, let me open the door for my cat. Okay, maybe I will jump off and end this live, and then I'll jump back on if anybody wants to ask a question that way. I just don't go on and on. Okay, I'm gonna end this.